Hi, this is Joel Rosenberg, founder and editor-in-chief of All Israel News, with part 3 of my interview with Ambassador Dennis Ross. We've got links to his bio and the things he's been writing, so we're going to get right into this conversation. I want to deal specifically with how we should understand Joe Biden in a couple of specific areas in the Middle East that we haven't covered so far. One of them would be Saudi Arabia. One of the areas that you and I first started talking about was when I was invited to go sit down with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, arguably the or one of the most controversial leaders in the world. Biden has been extraordinarily tough and saying we're going to completely reassess that relationship. How do you see Biden's approach, and what do you think? What would be your advice to the new president?
Look, I think there's a challenge here for sure, because we have an enormous stake in Saudi Arabia, and I don't just mean strategically because of oil and the strategic position they hold geographically, and in any kind of real coalition against Iran that is part of the leverage you build on it. But I'm also talking about the transformation of the Saudi society, the fundamental social changes that are taking place there, the discrediting of the Wahhabi ideology, which is the ideology that we have to fight with Al-Qaeda and ISIS and the like.
These are sweeping historic changes.
This is, for me, you have to balance what is a strategic interest with what are clearly areas where the Saudis cross the line. And how do you reconcile, how do you balance these two? And that's going to be a challenge for this administration. It's clear that Biden himself, feels the killing of Khashoggi and the handling of the women activists. He feels that crosses a line. It's unacceptable. And yet at the same time, I'm quite certain that he's not blind or indifferent to the stakes we also have in Saudi Arabia. So it's going to be a challenge for this administration, I think, to sort of sort that out. I'm hoping what they will do, I don't know that they will do this, but I'm hoping what they will do is have a very quiet dialogue with Mohammed bin Salman, which is an honest dialogue, which says, look, we understand we have a big stake in the success of your 2030 plan, because we know the National Transformation Plan can be a model for the rest of the region. And it's the absence of a successful model of development in the region that has created the appeal of extremes on both the secular side and also the radicalism side. But there are also issues that we're not going to surprise you. We're putting you on notice now. If you do things where we see you crossing the line on human rights in terms of how you deal with dissidents, we're going to call you out on it. But let's see if we can create a set of guardrails or boundaries for this relationship that allows us to promote the things that we both have very much in common and have an interest in promoting. And where we disagree, we'll be clear about how we manage that.
In a sentence or two, what is your overall view of how historic or not, your view, I don't want it to be my words, of what MBS is doing or trying to do inside the country?
Look, what he is doing inside the country is a wholesale transformation of the country, building the source of legitimacy on modernization, not on Wahhabism. If in the past, if we'd had a Saudi leader who was doing that, we would have basically said, this is our hope to get that. Now, obviously it's come with a number of grievous steps too. The killing of Khashoggi was horrific, wrong, and it needed a response from us, which honestly it didn't get. It should have gotten a response from us, not only because of the message it sends to Mohammed bin Salman, but to anybody else internationally. The fact is, the Iranians are out there kidnapping and just recently kidnapped and brought back and hung a dissident journalist. I mean, we should be establishing a high price for this kind of unacceptable behavior.
Okay, really quickly. So that's Biden and the Saudis. Interestingly, Biden's tough talk has been particularly tough on Recep Erdogan and Vladimir Putin, which is interesting. And maybe he's doing that in part as jujitsu against Trump during the campaign. But Erdogan is, let's just focus on him because it's the Middle East. How do you assess Erdogan and U.S.-Turkish relations, and where should they be going under Biden?
This is a tough one. Look, I think in the case of the Saudis, we have an enormous stake in their success. In the case of Erdogan, we have an enormous stake in managing the relationship because this is a country of 90 million people, strategically, geographically, very important, still a member of NATO, and it won't always be dominated by Erdogan. But we also have to establish clear limits on what he's doing. He seems to be trying to recreate the Ottoman Empire in one form or the other. And where he crosses the line here again, we have to establish limits. I would say with Turkey, Erdogan at this point, the more he faces domestic economic problems, the more he seeks to create greater success on the outside, or at least the image of reestablishing Turkey as a major power in the broader region. I think we have to make it clear what limits are. Right? The idea that he buys four S-400s, which would absolutely put the Russians in a position to compromise our stealth technology, completely unacceptable. So where he does things that are unacceptable, we have to be very clear. But we also have to somehow try to manage this relationship. I mean, there's a theme here in what I'm saying. We have stakes in both countries. Now, where they have behaviors that really aren't acceptable, and I would say I find Erdogan at this stage more of a threat of instability in the region. I don't see the Saudis as a threat to instability in the region. And so, there has to be some difference in terms of how we manage these. But Turkey, we have a long-term interest in, and figuring out the way to ensure that we don't put ourselves in a position where Turkey can no longer be a member of NATO, where there will be a post-Turkey Erdogan. We've already seen what happens. He was against. He had a candidate for mayor in Istanbul. He canceled the first election, and then his candidate lost even worse in the second election. So there is a basis in Turkey to hang on to, and I think it's critical that we do that. And I'm definitely going to have to go.
No, I appreciate it very much. Ambassador Dennis Ross, these 3 interviews have been super helpful as people try to figure out who is Joe Biden, what's his team, and what are the challenges he faces in the Middle East. Thank you so much for joining us on All Israel News.
My pleasure. Thank you, Joe. Always good to be with you.